couple of years, you know that your favorite Gaza journalist is not actually a journalist. But turns out he might not be in Gaza either. I mean, this is a recent recent revelation that you probably heard of because it's been all over the news and social media. Maybe not enough. The fact that the new Twitter feature showing the location of accounts has shown that. Yeah, many Gazan journalists or so-called Gazan journalists and pro-Palestinian accounts are not actually in Gaza when they pretended to be. Many white supremacist accounts are run by people who do not pass the, you know, uh, purity test, let's just say. And yeah, there's so this is a frightening story on the one hand, but what I find specifically frightening is the fact that people bought into this stuff to begin with, and that, you know, such accounts have gained prominence with the type of content they have. Um, Welcome to the Daily Objective. I'm Razi Ginsburg, and we have, for the first time on the show, hopefully of many times, David Raboy. David is a foreign policy analyst. He is on Substack at Late Republic Nonsense, and he is on X. I recommend following him there. David, thank you for joining me. What are your first thoughts when you saw that this was coming out?
It's great to be with you. I mean, I always think about it in the following way. Imagine that you've got a small town, and you've got a town meeting, and to decide the what happens in your town. And maybe it's 500 people live in the town, and 200 people show up at the meeting or something like that. And then all of a sudden you have 15,000 folks from India pop in, feeling very strongly about issues that are happening in your town. And then you're like, well, we have all these people. We may as well, make decisions based upon what all these people think about what's going on in our town. And that's really what Twitter has been like. And it's been like this on purpose, deliberately. When Elon Musk came in, he bought Twitter. The first thing he did was it was a big, he made a big deal about getting rid of a lot of folks that worked there. And we assumed that the folks he was getting rid of were people who were doing, leftist censorship. But the folks that he actually got rid of were the folks doing security. And he had a personal business interest in getting as many fake accounts as possible on Twitter to show his advertisers that he's got that he's got more eyeballs than he may have in reality. So Twitter has known this the whole time, and they've turned a blind eye to the uh to the weaponizing of our political discourse. And if you're Elon and you said that you're buying Twitter because it's the public square. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Twitter was the public square, and subsequently, his actions have done little but to trash that public square. And so, I think he's finally gotten a lot of heat and a lot of pressure on him to actually kind of do something about this stuff. I know that the previous CEO, Linda of X, was aware of this problem. I know that Elon Musk himself is aware of this problem, and that people at Twitter are aware of this issue. So I think this is their way of sort of doing a limited hangout where you come and you say, hey, we'll let you see these accounts, but we're not going to get rid of them. And I mean, look, the fact that we now see how fake a lot of this is obviously to the good. But this stuff should not exist on Twitter in the first place. It's not a matter of free speech. It's actually a violation of reasonable terms of service, um, to get rid of some of these accounts. And so I mean, we're seeing sort of how we're getting a little peek into how the sausage is made, and I think it should be a really big story because I don't know of anything that's more important than seeing how foreign actors, or frankly, even domestic bad faith actors, are able to screw with the political conversation in the United States.
Yeah. Okay, we'll talk about the power of these accounts and these tweets in a second. Thank you, Roland, for the super chat. Roland says, "Hi from your Swiss super chatter, who in reality has a Hungarian passport." Yeah, we'll call you a Palestinian journalist, just because anybody can be that if they want. So yesterday there was this story. The AP, Associated Press, tweeted. This is their tweet. Breaking, at least 24 people are dead and 54 wounded after Israeli airstrikes in Gaza, testing the ceasefire that began in October, officials say. Now, this tweet, you would think would piss off rational people, but it also pissed off irrational people. And I saw it mostly shared by pro-Palestinian accounts complaining about the testing the ceasefire wording there. So I replied to one of them, one prominent account that says, "What a batshit crazy headline." My reply was, "True. These airstrikes were a response to Hamas violating the ceasefire again. Completely dishonest of Associated Press to pretend that Israel initiated this latest round. Dishonest, but not inconsistent." I got this reply from somebody on Twitter, not the person who I was replying to. "Bullshit. If that were the case, Hamas's actions would have been the headline. Deny Zionist media all you want. It just makes you look really dumb." I mean, that's that's amazing. I mean, to this person, the Associated Press obviously is not going to lie, but then, the way they present whatever it is that is necessarily the truth, that is where the problem is. That's unbelievable. Like if any media organization reports any Israeli strike as what it actually is, as targeting terrorists, as responding to terrorism, then or if it reports it was it what it isn't, then that's what you believe, and that's how we end up having thousands of people in every major Western city calling essentially for the destruction of the only Jewish state in the world. And we know how that destruction would come about if the Palestinians were to win, with essentially finishing the job that Hitler started. This is what these people are advocating for, whether or not they know it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I mean it's not surprising because this is something that is in common, and I just noticed this, relatively recently. It's something that's in common across the, let's say, the anti-Israel, anti-Jewish side of things, which is that they target specifically the most obvious things that are true about Israel and the most obvious things that are true about its enemies, and they deliberately invert them. So, for example, you see, I mean, I think it can be seen very clearly, especially with someone like Tucker Carlson. He's just so perfect in this regard, because lately he's been talking about how Israel is evil because the Old Testament encourages people to look through the lens of blood guilt and blood superiority, whereas the New Testament sort of corrects that and rejects all that. So what he's saying is that the Jews, despite, and he said this in these words explicitly, that it's actually the Israelis that are trying to annihilate and commit genocide on the Palestinians only because they're Palestinian. Not because there's a war, not because there's actually a territorial conflict, um, not because there's a long history of this or that. No, it's because the Israelis just want to genocide as many non-Jews as possible, which allows him, of course, to say that that Israel goes and kills Christians deliberately all around the region. So it's literally an inversion of what we're dealing with when it comes to Israel's enemies in Hamas, especially, and in the Islamist movement. Um, and really that's what it is. They pick the things that are obviously true, that everyone knows are true, and they and they invert them. And what you just said was kind of another great example, is and pulling it into the kind of the main topic we're talking about. For my sins, I'm a subscriber to the Tucker Carlson newsletter, and every morning, every weekday, I get a little email. And what was he upset about today? Well, today he was very upset at the Washington Free Beacon, which is a pro-Israel publication, and the Free Beacon did an investigation on the APAC tracker Twitter account, and found that it's not a U.S. account. It's actually coming from Europe, with all five different countries mixed in, and it's sort of not what it purports to be. And Tucker got very upset at the Free Beacon, and he said, "Well, what's the difference where it's coming from, if it's true or if it's not true?" Which I thought was really interesting. Like, everyone now is kind of hip to the dangers of, let's say, foreign information operations through Twitter. But Tucker says, no, 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 that's all fine. That's all fine and good. Never mind what the foreigners say. If the foreigners are right, they're right. Which I think is kind of interesting, and gives the game away.
Yeah, Tucker, by the way, is the topic of today's episode of the reality show, and his whole spat with the Heritage Foundation. But yeah, the thing is, with people like Tucker and Candace, they are benefiting tremendously from all these fake accounts with hundreds of thousands, or not necessarily fake, but accounts that are not what they pretend they are, which I guess makes them fake. One of the big ones was. Uh, which one was this? Let me. So you retweeted this thread by friend of the channel, Eitan Fishberger, where he goes through some of these accounts. One of them is suppressed news. That's an account that I see popping up all the time, and it is from North Africa. And I think I'm not sure if it was from them, but one of these accounts said, "Yeah, I never, pretended otherwise." Well, I mean, this matters because if you're from, North Africa, which means from an Arab country, you are, if you're on the side of the good, you are either fighting against your own culture and own regime, or at the very least trying to leave. You're not trying to basically make the West as backwards as your culture. So yeah, this stuff matters. It matters where these people are, and why they're doing what they're doing, and to what extent they're telling the truth about who they are.
And look, I think it's an obvious point, but it needs to be made kind of hammered home again and again. Some people may say, why does it matter that there are all these fake accounts out there? And the answer is, it matters a whole lot. It matters a lot because these things start, I mean, information operations like this um, work because they start out fake and they become real. And and I mean, it's obvious what happens when the incentive structures on Twitter um lead one to say, oh, well, there's a big audience here, in very involved with that's rewarding the Jew hating stuff. I'm gonna really get into the Jew hating stuff because, hey, I can make a couple bucks on through monetization. And you know that's being propped up by fake accounts. So these folks are making money, and then other people look around and they say, wow, these people have huge audiences. And the Ian Carrolls, and the Groyper types, and a lot of these guys, what's the first thing they say? The first thing they say is, nobody listens to you guys. Look how many retweets we get, which is really funny, because what they're saying is, I mean, aside from the fact that I think they know that a lot of this stuff is fake, deep down, even if they don't know, they know. Um, they eventually people see it, and people who are not involved in this eventually pick it up and are kind of affected by it. I don't know about you. Obviously, as you know, someone who's outspoken on this, who's someone who's kind of identifiably Jewish. You know, I'm not approached all the time with people saying, "Hey, I think Candace is right. Israel really did kill JFK," or the usual stuff. I just don't hear it in my normal life, but my non-Jewish friends hear it a lot because people have no problem coming to them and saying these crazy things. And it's funny because over the last year, I think my non-Jewish friends are more freaked out by the number of people who pop in, who they know. Maybe it's a distant relative, maybe it's someone on Facebook that you worked with 3 jobs ago or something like that. But you see real people who are buying into a lot of these narratives, which are fake, which are goosed from abroad, and honestly, I think it's a massive national security threat, like straight up a national security threat when you're messing with the cognition of of the population. You're getting them to be stupid. You're getting them to believe things that are not real. And I think that we all suffer from that. I mean, God forbid, I think all the time, like, God forbid if there's a 9/11 tomorrow, half this country is going to say, oh, it's a false flag that Israel did. The other half is going to say it's a false flag that Trump did. And a legitimate, serious, sober foreign policy will be impossible. Foreign policy, domestic security policy will be impossible because the people will be going crazy and there won't be any unity. So, I mean, these are I honestly I think these are some of the things that matter a lot more than some of the more high profile foreign policy debates that we have now, or certainly a lot of the domestic policy debates.
Yeah, we talk a lot on this channel about, how we've gone in 24 years from, 9/11 to the city where 9/11 happened, voting for somebody with the ideology that flew those planes into those buildings. But yeah, and I remember in the aftermath, first of all, one big step towards that was the president at the time immediately lying to defend the ideology by saying Islam is a religion of peace. That's not how you start on the path to victory. That's how you ensure that you don't win. And yeah, where we are today, the after 9/11, there was the whole truther movement, which was very much confined to a very, very small, bizarre part of the left, and now it might be bigger on the so-called right than it is on the left. And of course, if it's not the people who told us they did it and who tell us they keep telling us they want to do it again, who's it going to be? It is, of course, the Jews. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Um, Paul asks me, does a day pass when you don't get abuse on X? Yeah, sometimes I don't tweet on a given day, but I have 1,500 followers. David has 200. I'm assuming, David, you get a lot of abuse. And have you seen over the last few days, sort of which ones that you probably get regular abuse from, like we get some regular trolls in the chat, which ones are actually completely fake?
I don't know. I guess I've never had it that bad, to be honest with you. The worst I had it was when I was supporting DeSantis during the 2024 primary. And it was MAGA trolls coming after me in a way that no one else had ever come after me before. But it does seem like I am less frequently targeted than many Jewish women. It seems like they really, really love to target Jewish women, who are kind of outspoken, pro-Israel, politically. And I mean, yeah, of course, I get my share of hate, but for one reason or another, I think, I mean, I just block. So there are folks that spend a lot of time sort of replying and arguing with these people. And if someone seems stupid, they get a block. So that makes the Twitter experience a lot more pleasant. But that said, I can tweet, "Hey, good morning. It's a beautiful day today," and it'll be, "Shut up, Jew," as the first reply, or like, "You are Jewish," and I'm like, okay, it's going to be that kind of day.
I mean, how can you say it's a beautiful day when there's a genocide in Gaza, you know?
Right, right, of course.
Um, yeah, it's uh, I had something to say about the trolls, but there's a super chat from a very much non-troll. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, Razi, there is no evidence Islam is a religion of peace. Yeah, there is quite a bit of evidence to the contrary, and yeah, and by the way, that's another interesting thing about this. What you said about, people from the MAGA movement, I absolutely can imagine that because I had this Twitter spat a few days ago with the British Nick Fuentes, I call him. We're going to do a show about him in the next few days. This uh, young um, white supremacist who is talking about how we should, kick out all the immigrants. And I kind of trolled him, I have to say, because I thought he deserved it. But my replies were all, Jew, Ginsburg, LOL, that kind of stuff. Which, of course, it's not even a, Hitler wrote a whole book. Can you come up with more than one or two words? That's basically where we are today. And
Right.
by the way, those replies to me get a bunch of likes. Just saying Ginsburg LOL is sufficient for many people.
Yes. Look, I think it's been clear for a long time that especially the Groyper types, the Fuentes fans, hang out all day in Discord servers together, and they run several different accounts. And someone will drop in your tweet or someone else's tweet, and they'll jump on it, and they'll kind of feast like vultures on it. That's actually a terms of service violation according to Twitter and according to X, which is, organizing offline hate mobs on another site to, to target a person or a tweet. That's behavior that that should result in banning. It doesn't. I don't know why it doesn't, because I'm not sure how helpful it is for the you know, for the the political conversation. On one hand, and on the other hand, I'm not sure how much of a violation of, civil liberties, First Amendment, free speech, it would be in any way to crack down on something like that. And yet it's not, and yet it still happens. I'm not sure what the plus side is. But obviously Elon believes that there is a plus side.
Um, yeah, Use Your Delusion says Bill Goldberg comes out with a Money in the Bank suitcase and no one knows how he got it. I don't know the context, but because it's a wrestling reference, I had to read it. Um, by the way, I have to say, if any of you anti-Semitic trolls are watching this, please do drop this in whatever Discord groups you have. It's good for the algorithm. We get more views, and good people do end up watching it. But yeah, it's we had this on a show last year when we criticized Tommy Robinson, which of course pissed off some of our audience, but also pissed off some people who are not in our audience. We got this immediate, like 10 minutes into the show, influx of people calling me the N-word, among other
Hmm.
marvelous things that they had to say. So yeah, I want to just maybe when we wrap up, think about, to what extent do you think there's um, actual enemy governments of countries that we should consider enemies, even if we don't consider them enemies. Uh, if not behind much of this, then taking advantage of it, and in a sense, we're letting them take advantage of it. We are inviting them, if and when they end up winning, and Israel and the United States of America are a thing of the past, this will be one of the moments that they will laugh at us over.
I think that look, I mean, I've been thinking and saying that this is a primarily a Russian information operation for a very long time. Um, and I get a lot of pushback. People say, no, no, it's Qatar. And I'm like, look, I literally wrote the book about Qatar information operations several years ago. There was no other book around about it, and I wrote it. And I'm definitely under no illusions about the badness of that regime. But I also know that they are completely incapable of pulling off anything like this. They're not incapable of signing a check, but they're incapable of anything sophisticated like this. So they're contracting it out, if anything. The people who do know how to do this very well are the Russians. I mean, they're the OGs of this stuff, going back to, literally creating the protocol of the Elders of Zion, and being the primary movers behind anti-Zionism throughout the Cold War. This is what they do. They use Israel and Jews as a wedge, within open societies. And I think you can make this case pretty well just with my favorite bit of evidence is the Epstein is Mossad narrative. Epstein is Mossad was something that was created completely 100% by Russia to push out and to become the dominant Epstein related narrative. It happened immediately after he died. I mean, you can actually trace this. You can trace it. You can find that it was published in three different books by pro-Kremlin publishers. It appeared 250 times in Russian state media in Russian before it ever came into English, and then it came through the slipstream into U.S. right-wing media, which is a thing that frankly should be studied. I think more than anybody, the Russians and the Chinese have the biggest vested interest in doing something like this because, man, for very little amount of money, they are able to break the relationship that the United States has with the most powerful military in a very crucial region. That which will effectively, which will effectively push the U.S. out of the Middle East in many ways, the same way the Russians got pushed out of the Middle East with Assad. So I think it's a really obvious one, and look, the other thing too is that after years of Russiagate, the American right is completely tuned out and turned off to the possibility that the Russians are doing anything bad. And the minute you say something, people will jump down your throat because they'll say, "Oh, well, Russiagate and Donald Trump and this and that," and they'll go through the whole thing. It's like, no, well, that's actually the perfect time now to begin doing information operations when you know that nobody will be looking at you. And number one, on one hand, when the right won't be looking, and the left, largely agrees with this whole take on Israel as it is. So they're not going to say anything. And you have a giant open road. You have an open lane, to walk down. Um, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what's like it freaks me out that foreign nations are able to so easily, you know, um, tweak the brains of the American right. I mean, I can't think of something. It's so depressing. They're able to just completely manipulate what's going on, and that's why I say that like the right's id is being steered from a foreign capital.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about how the right, is so quickly turned on Israel. Such big chunks of it have gone full anti-Semitic. But I remember when I first got into U.S. politics in the late 90s, early 2000s, Republicans, one of the things they were bragging about is how Reagan ended the Cold War. is so bizarre to see them now being more pro-Russia than the Democrats ever were. I mean, the Democrats were just soft on the Soviet Union,
Right.
which is bad enough. But they are actually now pro-Russia. How? Yeah. Well, I think you already answered how is that a thing, but still, it's
Uh, yeah, we have, and frankly, we have people in the United States. I mean, if you're talking about Tucker, Tucker's buddy George O'Neill is a Rockefeller heir, and has about 200 million bucks, and he's the main donor behind the American Conservative, and he funds a bunch of the people that appear on Tucker's podcast. So everyone from Douglas McGregor to Kirk Mills to, a bunch of these other guys to, Marjorie Taylor Greene to whoever. And he was the unindicted co-conspirator in the Maria Butina case. These guys all have, I'm, more than anything, I mean, yes, we see all this going on, but like we have a massive counterintelligence mess in the United States. And sadly, there's no incentive for anyone to do anything about it because Trump won. I mean, like, let's be honest, Trump won on the basis of some of this, some of the bots and the bot armies. And on one hand, you have that. On the other hand, you have the Democrats aren't too keen on looking into this either. So you have, again, you have it's open season, and I hope that we somehow get some more seriousness back, and we do open counterintelligence investigations that are absolutely proper to have on people like O'Neill, on people who have documented ties, between with the Russians and and with others who do nothing but information operations in the United States. I think it's a slam dunk. I think it's the most obvious thing to do. Hopefully we'll get it one of these days. I just hope it won't be too late.
yeah, and we are out of time, but I have to bring up this one more point.
Mhm.
Trump a few months ago said in a press conference or something that he was talking about images of Palestinian suffering, and he said you can't fake that. And as soon as I heard that, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, so much of the stuff is obviously fake. Like, there are times when you see that a supposed baby is a doll. Of course, babies die when, terrorists hide behind babies. But so much of this, I just today saw a short clip from Traveling Israeli showing again this clip of an ambulance driver holding a baby, performing supposedly CPR, just hitting the baby's chest. Nobody's asking, why is there a cameraman? Why is the cameraman not doing CPR? What is going on there? It's so much of it is fake, and like which makes you wonder, is this even going to help? Like, is this going to be a moment where people are going to say, okay, we thought this was all true, we thought this is what's going on in Gaza, but it turns out it's what's being reported from Poland or wherever, so maybe we will question that. Do you think that's a possibility?
I mean, we'll see. I'm sure all of your viewers will be familiar with my friend Richard Landis's great film, um, what do you call it, Pallywood, where he invented that term, and he made a documentary about like sort of Pallywood in the early days, and it's a thing that these guys do. We all know. So I mean, I remember when Trump said that you can't fake it. And again, like I slapped my forehead and was like, no, you literally can. This is what they do. They fake it. Um, but I mean, to your question, I mean, I don't know. I think it's possible that it's like every 6 months, every 6 months we get, so retarded we lose 10 IQ points. It just feels like that. And it's really scary to think that people will just kind of believe anything and they'll flip on a dime. And that's where we are. And frankly, that's what the conspiracy theories are for. The obsession with conspiracy theories, the Bridget Macron is a man, and the UFOs and the Bigfoot and all this stuff that doesn't really seem like it fits into this particular narrative, it does. It's the most important ingredient because it prepares the ground for accepting anything. And because it breaks it breaks the mental link between things that, could be true and things, that are, completely absurd on their face. And it breaks the ability for people to assess evidence correctly. And so, I mean, look, it's all part of it. It's all part of it. And I mean, just for my part, I mean, I'm very black-pilled on this stuff. I don't think there's a limit. I don't think there's a point at which the people will say, you know what, this is crazy. We're kind of rejecting all this. No, years ago, during the disengagement, I had friends who said, look, no, disengagement is good because it's going to be Israel and it's going to be Hamas. And who in the world would end up supporting Hamas? And I laughed and I was just like, they would support the devil with horns and who, I mean, like they would support, Adolf Hitler reincarnated if he was fighting the Jews. And because that's just what it is. And I think that's unfortunately that's where we are. So it's a kind of black pill from me on that.
Well, on that positive note, David, thanks so much for joining us. Where can people find you?
You can find me, the easiest way to find me is on Twitter or X at DAVEREADOI.
A link for that will be in the description. Thanks again. Hopefully, you can join us again soon. Thanks everybody for watching the reality show about how Tucker Carlson is euthanizing the American right is coming up next. And yeah, in a couple of minutes, stay tuned for that.